This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
As the entire world was being destroyed, mankind, the animal kingdom, there was one man who not only was worthy to be saved, but in his merit, all of mankind, his whole family, the entire animal kingdom, and the whole world was saved in his zechus. And the fact that we are all here today is also in the merit of this one individual, the merit of this tzaddik. This man's name, of course, was Noach. And this is an illustration of the principle that is enunciated in Sefer Mishlei, that tzaddik yisoid olam. A tzaddik is the foundation of the world. And in light of this lesson, and in the light of the fact that today, Gimel Cheshvan, is the first Yahrzeit of Maran, HaGaon, Rabbeinu, Ovadia, Yosef, Zechat Levracha, I would think it would be appropriate to speak a little bit about this giant who illuminated our very own generation. I must say that over the past year, I devoted a lot of time to reading a number of the biographies that came out about Rabbi Ovadia, learning from his Sfarim. I had always used the Yabia Omer Yechavadas, but I bought myself my own copy of the Yechavadas. Yabia Omer was out of print. Bought other Sfarim from Rabbi Ovadia. And I have to tell you that I don't know if I've ever been so intrigued, and I don't think anyone has ever captured my heart like Rabbi Ovadia Zechat Levracha. He was very meticulous to write down not only his chidushim, but whatever happened to him. And as a teenager, he wrote in his diary, he wrote the following: I know I am destined for greatness. That's what he wrote as a young man. Now, people may misunderstand these words, that there's some kind of expression of arrogance, but far from it. He wrote these words, he intended to remind himself of the responsibility that he felt rested on his shoulders. There is no question that he was blessed with incredible capabilities, awesome capabilities, almost supernatural mind. His mind, his memory, his ability to focus, but he also understood that his talents needed to be channeled in one direction. He could have channeled his talents in many directions, and he channeled them only in Torah. He once spoke to a few thousand people assembled at events on Chol Hamoed or a Shas rally, and he would recall that when he was a teenager in Porat Yosef, other teens would laugh at him. You're publishing Svarim, who do you think you are? And Ovadia would say, and by now I already wrote 40 Svarim. He wasn't congratulating himself, but he was trying to encourage the younger generation to push themselves, to have idealism, to aspire to greatness. He would say that every Ben Torah needs to have the goal to be a Gadol B'Yisrael. He would say that Napoleon would always gather his troops, and Napoleon would say to his troops, is there anyone here who doesn't want to be the general of this army? If there's someone here who doesn't want to be the general of this army, leave now. Because a soldier who doesn't want to be a general can't be a soldier. And Rabbi Ovadia would say that if a Ben Torah does not aspire to be a general in Torah, there'll never be a Ben Torah. Rabbi Ovadia, even at the end of his life, he's in his 80s and his 90s, the more respect he got, the more he was recognized as a Gadol Hadar, the more he felt he has to push himself to learn more and more. Even upward of 90, he would still learn more than 18 hours a day. And the older he got, he felt more pressure to learn more and more and more. One would think, okay, everybody knows he's a Gadol Yisrael. He doesn't have to prove himself anymore. He already knows everything. No. The older he got, the greater he was recognized, the more he felt the responsibility not to waste his time. His family would relate that if anybody allowed someone in outside of his regular hours, he would get upset at them. He said, what do you want? You want me to be an Am Haaretz Gamor? I'm going to lose 90 seconds from learning. What do you want me to be? An Am Haaretz? When his son-in-law, Rav Aaron Butbol, had a baby boy, his grandson's bris, the family called the bris for 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock on the dot, Rabbi Ovadia walks in. No, let's go, let's start. So son-in-law said, Harav, the guests aren't here yet. Could you wait a few minutes? He said, we don't wait minutes. We don't throw away minutes. You want me to be in Ha'aretz Gamor? The family realized he wasn't joking, but to him, to waste a moment meant to remain in Am Ha'aretz, because he didn't judge himself and weigh himself compared to other Talmidei Chacham. He weighed himself compared to the enormity of the Torah, and even a moment he could not let go by. One character trait that was a hallmark trait of Rabbi Ovadia was he was fearless and not superstitious, and this is a very important midah. He was fearless from his detractors, from his naysayers, and when he felt he was right, he was fearless of even poskim that preceded him. Very interesting. Shem HaGedolim. Shem HaGedolim was written by the Chida. Chida writes that he heard from the elders of Yerushalayim that there are two works of the Rishonim, Rabbeinu Yerucham and the Baal HaItor, that these two Rishonim can never be reworked into a new format. They can never be republished. Because these two works come from a world called Olam De'izchataya, a hidden realm, and they must remain hidden and remain in the print that they're in now, which was an ancient print, and until a couple of years ago, the only copies we had of Rabbeinu Yerucham and the Baal HaItor were old, worn out, very difficult to read texts. Says the Chida, anyone who tries to rework these texts will either die young, or the manuscript will disappear into thin air. Says the Chida, he knows anyone who ever tried to republish it, the manuscript would miraculously disappear. There was a young man by the name of Rabbi Yair Chazan. He was learning in Rabbi Ovadia's son's Kaila. And he had an offer from a publishing house to re-typeset, to republish the works of Rabbeinu Yerucham and the Baal HaItor. But after all, he was afraid of this prediction of the Chida, that anyone who writes and reworks these Svarim will either die young, or the manuscript will disappear. So he asked many Gedolei Yisrael, and they said, you can't do it, you have a wife and children, you're jeopardizing your life, you're endangering yourself. He came to Rabbi Ovadia. Rabbi Ovadia said, it's Torah, you republish it, I will help you. Don't be afraid, I'll help you out. What about the Chida? The Chida says Rabbi Ovadia, the Chida said he heard it from Chachmei Yerushalayim. They were wrong. We don't do these type of things. We're not superstitious. You do the right thing. You don't worry about these type of things. Rabbi Chazan began to work on the project. Shortly after, very strange things began to happen to his family. One kid was hospitalized. Another kid was hospitalized. He comes to Rabbi Ovadia. He says, things are going wrong for me. Maybe I should be worried about this. Rabbi Ovadia looks him in the eye. He says, are you afraid? He said, Maran, if you give me your assurance, I won't be afraid. Rabbi Ovadia said, on my shoulders. He went back, and Baruch Hashem, as of now, many, many volumes of Rabbeinu Yerucham have been published, and Rabbi Yair Chazan is alive, well, him and his whole family. So Rabbi Ovadia was fearless. He was fearless on anything that was not halacha. If it was not halacha, did not enter his world. There's one attribute and quality that Rabbi Ovadia excelled at in an amazing way, in an incredible way, that I would like to highlight and focus. And it's a problem that we could say that our generation struggles with, certainly more than any generation in the history of the world. And that is in the area of Richuz HaMachshava. Richuz HaMachshava means focus, paying attention. We have become very distractible. It's very hard for a person to concentrate on anything for any length of time. Our minds wander, they race, every moment, phone, message, picture, text, and so forth. And our fast-paced lives don't allow us to sit and focus on one thing. Just to sit down with a Gemara and think for 10 seconds, what is the Gemara's question? Many people have a hard time doing that. I see it all the time. I give shiurim. People every 5 seconds, 10 seconds, they're checking this, checking that, the time, the this, the that, the message. You daven Shemona Esrei. It's alarming the number of foreign thoughts that come into the Shemona Esrei. If we daven Shemona Esrei, and in the middle of the second bracha, halavayit should only be the second bracha, what happens? You think, oh, what am I going to eat for lunch today? Oh, I'm going to eat the sandwich. I bought it in this store. Oh, when I bought it in this store, I saw the so-and-so in the store. And so-and-so is making a bar mitzvah next week. And at that bar mitzvah, I'm going to see my friend who I haven't seen in 20 years since the last time I was in Eretz Yisrael. And when I was in Eretz Yisrael, I took a plane and I stopped over in London. And before you know it, you're in the second bracha of Shemona Esrei. You're already in London. That's how our minds operate. Chavetz Chaim even writes that in our generation, it's rare to have even one Shemona Esrei without one foreign thought. And yet this Gadol Hadar had such an unusual and staggering ability to concentrate. One day, in fact, he climbed to the top of a ladder. It's well known. He climbed to the top of a ladder to get the Sefer Zichru Taras Moshe of the Chai Adam. He wanted to look up the halachos of using soap on Shabbos. And he's sitting there on the top of the ladder. An hour goes by. 2 hours go by. 3 hours go by. And he forgot the fact, he was so concentrated on the Sefer, he forgot the fact that he's on the top of the ladder. When he finished learning the Sefer, he took a step. But he took the step in midair. And unfortunately, he ended up in the emergency room. He broke his arm. Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein pointed out that his father-in-law, Rabbi Yosef, went to visit Maran Rabbi Ovadia. And Rabbi Yosef, if somebody needed to be visited, he would devote at least 30 seconds or a minute to the visit. And you have to give people time. Rabbi Yosef has to give, so at least 60 seconds he would have to give to the visit. Maybe if there was a Gadol Hadar, 90 seconds. And he stayed with Maran Rabbi Ovadia for an entire hour. And Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein asked, your time is so precious, you don't even give up minutes. How could you give up an hour to Rabbi Ovadia? So Rabbi Yosef said, never in my life did I ever see someone with such ability to concentrate and focus and block out everything else that he doesn't even realize he's on the top of a ladder. That was what Rabbi Yosef was being mechabed, the midah of concentration, the midah of focus. And in fact, one time Reichman was sitting next to Rabbi Ovadia on a transatlantic trip, and Reichman's looking around. This guy's watching something on the screen. This guy's checking his phone. This guy's getting up, strolling about, wandering. And Rabbi Ovadia, from the moment the plane took off till it landed, he did not move his eyes from the Sefer. Hours and hours and hours. The turbulence he didn't even look up. Absolute focus. About 7 years before Rabbi Ovadia passed away, he was having terrible stomach pains, terrible stomach discomfort. And his son Reb David took him to the hospital. The doctor said he needs laparoscopic surgery, but at his age, he can't have anesthesia. He'll never snap out of it. He'll never come out of it. And it's going to be a very painful procedure. We're going to have to call in many hospital staff to hold him down. And Reb David, you can't stay in the room. It will be too painful for you to hear his crying. Don't even stay near the door. And be aware, this is not going to be a pleasant procedure. So Reb David says, explain to Abba what's going to happen. Prepare him for what's going to happen. So they told Rabbi Ovadia. Rabbi Ovadia said, no, if this is what I need, it should be a kapara. It should be a kapara for my avonos. Do me a favor, give me the Gemara Baba Basra. Maybe I'll distract myself a little bit. The doctor said to Reb David, come back in a half hour. The surgery will be a half hour. 30 minutes later, Reb David comes into the room. He says, Rabbi Ovadia, how are you feeling? He says, I'm slightly irritated. When are they going to do the surgery already? Rabbi Ovadia did not even know they operated on him. He had such intense concentration in the learning. Not only did it not, he didn't even know that he was being operated on. That's are there even words to describe this level of concentration? And in fact, Netanyahu, Prime Minister, once came to visit Rabbi Ovadia. And Netanyahu was ushered in with the photographers, the whole media crew. There's such a hullabaloo, there's such a rash, there's such a balagan. And Rabbi Ovadia is sitting there with his head in the Gemara. He doesn't even realize that they're there. After a few minutes, Eli Yishai MK he tells Netanyahu, you know what, I'm going to tell Rabbi Ovadia that you're here, so he could greet you. Netanyahu said, don't do anything. Never in my life did I see a person who, in the presence of such commotion, is not even aware, doesn't even flinch. By now, this was the biggest story in Israel. All the cameras on Rabbi Ovadia, all the noise in the background, he doesn't even know they're there. Rav Moshe Yosef, Rabbi Ovadia's son, tells Netanyahu, look, if you don't tell him you're here, you will wait here until the nighttime. His son goes over to Rabbi Ovadia, he says, Rabbi Ovadia, the Rosh HaMemshala comes. Baruch haba, why didn't you tell me you were here? There's no question that Rabbi Ovadia was blessed with exceptionally gifted mind, unusually exceptional ability to concentrate. But there's also no question that he elevated it, he heightened it, he developed it. And all of us on our own levels can certainly improve and heighten and make a little bit better our ability to focus and our ability to concentrate. Whether it's on a mitzvah, when you're learning, the first thing a person has to do is remove all distractions. You cannot learn with a phone. If the phone is on, there's no ability to focus and concentrate. Once distractions are removed, then a person is able to train their mind a little bit, to focus, to hone in on what is being learned. And in a world where our attention spans are shrinking by the moment, by the second, let this great Gaon stand up for us as the paradigm, the example, what a human being can accomplish, how high a human being can reach. Rabbi Yonasan Eibishter says that when a gadol passes away, his ma'alos, his attributes, his qualities become hefker l'rabim, are available for the taking. So this is the first Yahrzeit. Let us look up to Maran Rabbi Ovadia, try to emulate, try to strive to achieve a little bit from his greatness. And he should be a Me'eretz Yosher for all of Klal Yisrael. B'vias Gal Tzedek, M'her v'yameinu. Amen.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.